I am Barry Honig. I am the president and CEO and founder of TruckPay. And welcome to everyone to our panel on paths in sustainability. I want to, hopefully, our discussion this afternoon will sustain you in your level of awakeness after that lunch. So I want to introduce our panel. We're going to first we'll start with Andrew. Please introduce yourself.
Good afternoon. My name is Andrea Paluszkiewicz, one of the managing partners of Eco Materials in Philadelphia. Our facility is an industrial contaminated soil wash recycling operation where we take in excavation waste, and through our CD equipment out of Northern Ireland, we separate the sand and stone materials out of the soil and clean it to a point where it's resellable back into the construction industry.
Great, thank you. And Andrea Johnson from CDRA, can you introduce yourself?
Yes, my name is Andrea Johnson, and I am the Executive Director of the Construction and Demolition Recycling Association. We're a national association promoting the recovery and recycling of construction and demolition materials.
Great, thank you. And Håkan, can you introduce yourself?
Yes. So my name is Håkan Holmgren, CEO and co-founder from CheckProof, and is from Sweden, and CheckProof is a software provider to the construction material industry, but also have experience with recycled material a lot from my previous career before I started CheckProof, and also supporting a lot of customer that's doing a lot of recycling material.
Thank you. And Mark.
Hi everyone, Mark Masotti, CEO and co-founder of alterBiota. We have two products that we make. One is called Delta C, which is a circular product that's made from byproduct biomass and converted into a liquid admixture that can help improve the quality of the performance of concrete while decarbonizing it. And the other one is called digital aggregate, which we've talked a little bit about here last couple days, which is computer vision technology for giving rich characterizations of aggregate materials, which I think is also, in a way, supporting circular and sustainable marketplaces because it allows for advanced recovery and reuse of difficult construction byproducts, et cetera.
Thank you. And Logan.
Yeah, Logan Pickels from Luckstone. I'm the Senior IT Director. We have about 26 locations and take big rock and make little rock.
So yeah, as I said, I'm Barry Honig, and we do truck scale management software as well as fleet management software, and I particularly love this field of circular economy, of being able to take materials, recycle them, turn them into really productive, useful materials. It's really one of the great win-wins I think that we have, where you can avoid filling up landfills, which are already too full, create new jobs, promote more new technologies, both on the physical and software side, and really make not only the planet a better place, but make more and interesting products. Now, what I'm going to attempt to do here is something which, well, for those of you who've been exposed to me for the last day, is try to be quiet and ask questions and listen more. Let me start out with a first question. I'll initially direct this one at Mark. Anyone can feel free to jump in afterward. So, Mark, can you talk about some of the kind of alternative materials that for SCMs that are being used, how they're impacting the concrete industry, and how they're helping to substitute for materials that may be becoming in short supply now?
Yeah, happy to. I think before I talk about new ones, I'd like to talk about old ones. You know, I think the concrete industry has been at the forefront of circular economy for a long time. I mean, if you think about materials like fly ash and ground granulated blast furnace slag or silica fume, I mean, these are huge recovery operations in use, and they're really put to good use, not only for technical reasons, but for environmental reasons in the last few years. But you're seeing other things like, say, ground glass, I mean, ground glass is a pozzolan and a supplementary cementitious material that has grown in popularity recently. I think, one of the challenges with a material like that is supply. I mean, there's a lot of interest around it, but finding the resource can be difficult, and I think that is just singing the same refrain about fly ash and steel slag and silica fume that a lot of producers have heard over the years, which is, can I get it? And so then, of course, other things like calcined clays, which Nishant talked a little bit about. They're highly abundant, like clay materials. And I mean, you follow a lot of the same processes you do for calcining limestone. So those are quite interesting and I think emerging at a rapid rate. Then, of course, there's materials like the ones we produce, which we don't really classify them as SCMs, but they are like a filler type material that can displace cement and concrete and support performance improvements. With our Delta C product, we, unlike a lot of SCMs, you actually see early strength as well as durability. And so there's some really interesting things coming out of the market. And yeah, I'm sure that my friends beside me are recovering all sorts of stuff that can possibly go to use as SCMs in the future.
Well, great, thank you. So would anybody like to add to Mark's comments?
Yeah, I think in my short time in the recycling world here, I'm learning that with concrete, I think the focus seems to have always been on the cement and not the sand and stone aggregates because there weren't many alternatives that provided a consistent spec material. And when you're dealing with something like concrete, it has to be consistent, otherwise, you're going to have larger issues. I think through wash recycling and with enough time and testing, we can win over some of these ready-mix manufacturers and give them a better understanding of the performance of concrete using really what is natural sand and stone that's recovered from soil. It's not a manufactured process like some of these other materials that I've learned about. It's really just an extraction of virgin material. A little more challenging in an urban environment like Philadelphia, but we're building a facility in Fort Worth, Texas, where it's going to be processing more virgin soil, which will have more virgin sand and stone.
That's great, thanks. And Andrew, while we're on the topic, can you talk about a little bit about what's going on in terms of taking that contaminated soil, turning that into sand and aggregates and so forth? So speak a little bit about that, if you will.
Yeah, so through our process, my mic off? Sorry about that. Through our process, we extract these materials from the soil and we give them a lot of high pressure water and agitation so that the rock is truly scrubbed and the sand is scrubbed of the silt. And the silt and the water carry predominantly most of the contaminants that we see, heavy metals and oil, things like that. So that when we sell that sand and rock product, it meets residential clean fill standards because the last thing we want to do is contaminate somebody else's property. And, it had to be a seer to become a believer, but really when you come to a facility that does what we do, you will see soil go in one end and out will come 57 stone, number 8s, C33 concrete sand, and a masonry sand. Our byproduct in the contaminated process is our clay. That clay goes to landfill because it is carrying the contaminant. But if you're doing just clean fill washing, you can make a clean clay. And we have spoken to some cement kilns about the calcinine clay, and they've been studying the contents of our clay and working with us on that as well.
Yeah, it's great. And if one thinks about that, I mean, the fact that you're taking that huge amount of soil and then taking it and turning it mostly into usable, reusable material, the burden that's being placed on the landfills is dramatically reduced. So it's great.
Yeah, we're getting about a 75% recovery rate, and we're trying to improve on that.
Yeah, that's fantastic. So while we're on this theme, Logan, can you speak a bit about Luckstone as being a major producer? How you folks what are you doing in the recycle and sustainability world? And if you could share some of your thoughts on how recycled production, your thoughts about how that impacts virgin production, for example.
Sure. Some of the things that we do is really from the start. So from greenfield all the way to reclamation as a whole, every site has a plan. We need to make sure that we're not overproducing for the market, making sure we're using every bit of either overburden or dust or either sand fines, whatever it may be, into other materials as well. So we test things on site. We make sure that if we can find a different use, such as the fines or the sands, into a baseball diamond sand or whatever it may be, we can actually continue to use what we're taking out in all aspects of what we're taking out of the ground.
That's great, thank you. So let's just switch gears a little bit, because what we want to cover here, we've been talking now about the sort of, we'll call it physical technologies, the technologies that help in the actual physical production recycling process. Let's talk a little bit about the software that can help support some of that. So maybe, Håkan, you can talk a little bit about how CheckProof and the work in general that goes on with documentation compliance, because Andrew's mentioned already, making sure that soil meets proper standards. Mark, similarly, for what he's doing. Talk about what software can do to help in this regard.
Yeah, we have quite a lot of customers in Europe that take in a significant amount of recycled material, and it's a lot of heavy regulation to follow up what you take in, and if you get material that's not in spec that you're not allowed to take, and how you document and track that, and also if it happened, what did we do with that material, to have full documentation, the full way what we're doing with it. So that is one part where we see our software is used to document that, and also a lot with the quality, taking samples and tracking that also when it's out of spec.
Yeah, that's great. Andrea, so of course at CDRA, there's a tremendous amount of focus on data, on life cycle analysis. I'm wondering, could you speak to all of the work that's being done with this, and what CDRA in general and LCA, talk about LCA a bit and needs for data.
Sure. So the CDRA is sponsored with help of our sponsors. The two LCAs, one for gypsum recycling, the other one that we're working on for shingle recycling. And the life cycle analysis is really important, not just to us and our members, but to the greater community, contractors, across the board, even government sector, because it will give more concrete information to make these decisions. We're trying to include a calculator, which can be used even as simple project sites, that can include, okay, you have a recycler here, but the job's here. Does it make sense logistically to ship it that distance? Are we saving, is it worth it to ship it all this way for the, to recycle it? And sometimes it doesn't, there's not enough value in that, as much as we want to recycle things. And also economically, it doesn't always pay. So these two things, the environment and the economy, because if there's not a financial benefit, or if it's too financially burdensome, it just won't happen. It's just not possible. And then so these programs go away. So the LCAs are a big push for us to get this good data and be able to make good programs.
Yeah, no, that's great. Thank you. And I think some of the things that what we do with our scale software in this regards is being able to measure how much of the materials are coming in and how much is being used to actually landfill diverted. And that's really important in conjunction with what Andrea was saying in terms of the cost of doing it, transporting it, but actually being able to measure that in a meaningful, very meaningful way. How much, for example, fuel, how much man time, how much other materials you're using. So you really have to do sort of a total cost analysis to determine the benefits of the recycled material. Mark, I would like to ask you, because you talk a bit about the digital aggregates. Discuss that a bit more and how that plays into the whole discussion here.
Yeah, well, I mean, when recycling, say, construction debris or various materials, you need to take great care to understand the particle size of those materials. But also beyond that, things like, say, recycled concrete aggregate is a little bit of a complex and heterogeneous material in that it's not consistent all the way through. Contains, you know, cement, sand, and coarse aggregate. And so one of the things that we've not done yet, but we see on the roadmap for the future is using a technology like digital aggregate to actually characterize and begin to quantify how much mortar is on recycled concrete aggregate versus like virgin stone within there, so you can have a better understanding of the absorption of that aggregate, which is a critical aspect of using any aggregate. And then, you know, in discussions with Andrew, you know, there's probably a lot of different ways that it can be used in soil reclamation in terms of understanding the particle size of the various phases that you're separating. And so I think computer vision, like David Boardman has shown us over the years, and we're trying to do with our own technologies, has huge potential for helping the bulk materials industry.
Great, thank you. So, Andrew, can you talk a bit about what do you see? You know, you're doing the contaminated soil. Do you see other applications for the kind of technology you have with other materials, for example? And do you see, I know you said you're going into Fort Worth, which is great. Do you see that there will be opportunity to really expand this out or have operations, whether it's you or others, doing this across the country so that we can deal with contaminated soil in a meaningful way?
Sure. So there's absolutely other feed materials. Some of the things we're looking at are C&D fines, railroad ballast, what's the other? The sand they use in the foundry sand. So there's different waste streams that we can potentially, you know, feed into the material and still make a spec product on the back end. Our next application will be the C&D fines that we're going to be attempting and trying to understand how much of that we can, you know, sort of blend into the feed. There's also hydro excavation and vac truck spoils. I'm involved in another business that has a vac truck, and that's constantly an issue of getting rid of that wet material. So the facility with some additional equipment can accept that. And what happens there is we reclaim that water that's coming out of that material. So it's, instead of being a nuisance like it is for a landfill or, you know, reclamation site, it's actually, you know, water positive for us. And the other part of the question is, absolutely, I think these facilities are needed in not just contaminated markets, but just in general major metro areas or areas that are, you know, missing close aggregate producing facilities, maybe where sand's more of a challenge to find a pit, but there's still good sand content in the soil. And it's, you know, you're never going to replace the aggregate producers, right? I think sometimes in talking to a few of my local competition, you know, I get this, like, we're the recycled stigma, and they don't want to talk about our sand and where it comes from. We're recycled and never good enough for concrete. But we only take a small chunk of market share, and if we're really focusing on contaminated soil, it's such a benefit for sustainability that, you know, it can't be something that we just sweep under the rug because our sand may not be concrete friendly. There's a lot of other applications for sand in the concrete industry, and we sell to infrastructure guys doing a lot of pipeline work or specialty soil manufacturers that require a specific amount of sand in their product. So I think there's plenty of room to go around, and quarries and sand pits are, you know, more difficult to permit and position within a major city. You know, a lot of cities are importing those materials from way outside the limits. I've learned more about that than I ever thought imaginable, and the fact that material is shipped out of Canada to Florida and Los Angeles makes my head spin, because the Philadelphia market does have a pretty close proximity to virgin sand and stone. So it was interesting.
Yeah, I think it's a really great point that you're making, is that there sometimes can be a perceived antagonistic relationship between virgin producers and recycled. But I think, as you pointed out, it's exactly right. The market is large enough. The demand, as we heard yesterday, from our economist, an investment banker, about the growth of the industry. And I think it's exactly right what you're saying. I mean, none of us really want to have contaminated soil like kind of just constantly put back into the earth. So the work you're doing, I think, is fantastic. Logan, I wonder if you could share, the perspective of Luckstone on this, as the fact that you guys are producers. Do you guys kind of view the, recycle material as a positive thing? Do you see it negatively, or what is your view and thoughts on it?
I was going to say, as far as we have some C&D recycling, things like that at some of our sites, but as far as taking in, we do take in concrete, we do take in asphalt. Where we can, we try to crush it and put it back in. But I wouldn't say there's a major grievance towards anybody or anything like that in the market, but we do similar things. We also are very particular about what goes back into the soil. So we do have a few sites that are getting a reclamation fill, but the regulations, the timing, all those pieces are really strict around it, and we turn stuff away all the time just because of it can't go to a different truck, or there might be something, or there's some type of reason that we won't accept it. So we try to be as good about that as possible, but it is tough.
I think part of the, to back up, I think it's fair that the end users are concerned about recycled material. And I was on a panel at the CDRA event and listening to some of those end users who have been shown one material by a recycler, and they make a deal, and then next thing you know, it starts that way, and then starts changing, and they're pushing more material into it that they didn't really show the first time. And I saw that with recycled concrete years ago when that kind of came onto the market, and people weren't just throwing concrete in there. There was a lot of other materials. And so you start to see people taking advantage of being a recycler and pushing the boundaries of what's acceptable. And that's created, definitely a hesitation sometimes in the use of recycled products. And I think that's the kind of differentiation between what we're doing, is that, with the type of equipment that we're using, we're getting a consistent back-end product. We're not just a crusher and a screener, and somebody's throwing a little bit of wood and brick on top of the recycled concrete that they're making, and among other things. So I think we all have a lot of work to do in the recycling space to kind of break through it from what has been done in the past.
That's great. Andrea, can you speak about what members of the association, since you're really at the kind of the nexus in terms of the producers, recyclers, et cetera, what you're hearing, what people's thoughts are in terms of using recycled material, and what can be done, what is being done to kind of verify the integrity of those materials, sort of like a good housekeeping seal, if you will.
Yeah, very interesting. I think it really depends on the material itself. There's when you say recycled materials, of course, there's everything from plastics to cardboard to, aggregates, so forth. But I'll stay with the aggregates side, as well as with shingles, which I think are two that would apply most to this audience. And there is a problem. There is a problem with trying to get consistency, let's put it that way, because a recycler has to work with anything they receive, right? So if they receive inconsistent material, they have to always adjust to that, which causes challenges. If they're receiving concrete, brick and block, or if they're receiving shingles, and trying to work with a hot mix asphalt plant for consistency to go back into roads, or if it's trying to meet specs for, RCA used in some other form. It is a challenge. It's one of the things as an association that we're working on, is trying to help members set standards. It's one of the things that we're really pushing across the board. And it's a hard push because it changes also regionally as far as what what can be done. So I think it's something we definitely need to work on. I think that the recyclers who are consistently showing testing, if you are using recycled material, request testing. A good recycler will have it. They can back it up. Also, there's certification authorities out there, for lack of a better word, that can help, verify data and so forth as far as consistency. And I would say use those and rely on those. And it is an emerging issue with the recycling industry as we try to grow and push it and use it in a more commercial based.
Great, thank you. Hoke, can you talk to, in terms of the technologies, because we're talking here about verification, providing documentation, doing stuff in real time. Can you talk a little bit about what was going on in Europe now, how those regulations may be informing what's going to happen here, and what can be done from a software perspective to give users of recycled aggregates or concrete, et cetera, more confidence in the materials?
I think the biggest, what we have been challenged in Europe has been like standards, what material that you're allowed to use when you're building a road. That's been the biggest challenge when we talk about recycling materials in Europe and in Sweden, that you are not able to sell it because the specification that's saying that should come from natural rock. And that's a little bit been a change that a lot of talk in like Swedish Aggregates Association, that talk, okay, how could we change the standard to allow to use more recycled material? And also if you look at concrete in Sweden, we have the same challenge that you're not allowed to use recycled material because traceability, where it comes from. And that's been a big challenge. Now we see a lot of like smaller like bricks and so that need to have the traceability to do it. But for us as a software supplier is what we're trying to solve, help the customer with, is to build the process and routines to secure permits and secure traceability, so you can be able to help to build the new standards to secure the products that you're producing.
Yeah, absolutely. So really kind of marrying, if you will, the work that is being done on the physical side, the work that you're doing on compliance, documentation, validation, what we do in terms of actually really measuring it, weighing it, et cetera. Combining all of the disciplines together, I think, is really what is going to enable the circular economy to keep growing and booming as it should. What I'd like to do...
Real quick, I had a thought, because...
Please.
Sorry to interrupt you, but
Please.
this is kind of where I found Mark's technology pretty interesting, is that I was a contractor before I got into recycling, and you would put in a document, your gradation report, and whether that's for, virgin stone or recycled concrete, a lot of the times, we would just grab one that was in the file, and they're 3 years old. And that recycled concrete from that supplier back then, I'm sure he maybe picked a 5-gallon bucket of his best looking stuff and took that to the lab. So Mark's technology would be taking that information in real time and checking the gradation of our aggregates being produced in real time. And we would have some kind of, like, I'm thinking, as I'm listening to him yesterday, is like how we could give access to our purchasers on our website in real time. There's this secrecy too much around it. And I think it all goes back to what we're talking about here and some of the sins of the past. And there's so much great technology out here producing such great spec product in sand pits, mines, and recycling operations. It's why not give the consumer the confidence by sharing more information that isn't dated. And part of that's cost. If I send material to a lab today and I don't get it back for a week and I've already sold that sand, it's kind of dated. So I think that's where I was really interested in what you were doing.
Yeah, thanks for that. And even just in terms of an audit trail, a sieve analysis, nobody keeps the stone or sand or whatever that they sieved. They just have somebody that wrote it down, and whether they wrote it down correctly or not. Whereas with something like computer vision and say digital aggregate, our technology, I mean, you could potentially have 100 images associated with a particle size distribution of a material that you ship to somebody. And if they ever ask you and say, here they are, you can have somebody else analyze them if you want, right? Another party, just as a verification. And so it gives a bit of an audit trail, which I think is really important, especially for recycled materials where heterogeneity is more of a problem, can be more of a problem.
Absolutely. Okay, before we, well, how are we doing on time here? Before we open it up for questions, question will start from Andrea and work our way down. What do we think the future looks like for the next 10 years for being able to really improve the circular economy, the economics around it, what should be done to really increase it? I mean, after all, space to bury old bad materials is not growing; it's shrinking. As Will Rogers said about real estate, it's a good investment because God ain't making any more of it. And so, Andrea, if you could start, what do you think? What does the future look like, and how can we improve on it from here?
Yeah, so interesting question. Of course, I come from a waste and recycling background, but I feel that we need to shift our thinking that recycling material is material, not waste. And there's a statistic that's going around, it's unverified, but for every 6 landfills that are closing, only 1 is opening. On either coast, West Coast, East Coast, we have a huge landfill problem. It's a huge issue. And because of that, we really need to look at how we can conserve this space. And throwing good materials that can be reused in any other way is really going to hurt us economically. And one of the things as a hauler, I had a roll-off company. As a hauler, we had a local landfill in Richmond close, Shoesmith landfill, and it was a major landfill. When it closed, as a hauler, my tipping fees went from $40 a ton to $65 in 2 weeks. So I had to, of course, pass that cost on to all my customers because there's only a limited places you can take it, right? Because you have to take it to a permitted landfill. The thing is, this is an economic issue as much as it is a sustainability issue because waste, everybody pays for waste. If you're on a construction job, your household, the schools, the government, your grocery store, it doesn't matter. I mean, if the landfills fill up and they close and there's not another place to take it, or if you have to transport it further, it increases costs. And aggregates, concrete, brick, block are the #1 recoverable construction material, period. And to landfill it is really, I think, a shame because it can be used. Even if you can't put it back into a concrete mix, it can be used as road base. Think of how many rural communities, I came from a rural community in Virginia, and our primary, we made aggregates on site, and our #1 use was local people using it on their roads. So the thing is that these materials can be used, they don't have to be landfilled, and I think the landfill issue in the next decade will be one of our biggest.
Absolutely. Okay, who's it? Logan?
Yeah, I don't know if I can top that one. No, it was great. For us, to me, I really think it's going to be kind of heard from Andrew and some others around transparency, around data, making it actionable. As much as we want to say we do a great job now as technology advances in equipment and software, you throw AI over data, you can do more analytics. I think we'll just get better and better. So I'm looking at least my thought is a lot of our challenges will be able to use data if we can make it actionable and actually work through some of these scenarios.
Absolutely. How about Håkan?
Yeah, I think if you look at countries like UK, we did work with a lot of different countries, probably UK, Belgium, and those countries are the ones that I've been seeing is the best on this recycling. And it's a lot, I think, also of logistic and getting like use the material between the sites that you're using also. And there's been some invention in Sweden where look at like, okay, if you have us working on a site here, you can order material from the other one to get it moving. So it's because sometimes the material could be not need to go through a plant to be recycled, it could be used directly also. So it's a lot of things that are happening, but also if we talk of sustainability in general, I think also the things that is happening a lot now with Volvo and CAT is like rebuilding, utilize the equipment more and not give them a second life. That's something that's starting to come in now, especially into the aggregates, especially in Europe when we see rebuild project. Instead of building and buying a new machine, you rebuild it again and use it 10.
We've definitely done that. I totally understand.
Yeah. So there's a lot that's happening there, and also utilizing the processing equipment most efficient, like reduce the CO2 footprint and so on.
Yeah, absolutely. Mark, and yeah, if you could say something. And I think one topic we didn't cover was, which we should cover before we wrap up here, is decarbonization. Can you talk a little bit about that along with the future?
Yeah, I'd love to. So I think what I think I'd like to see happen moving forward is a little more policy coordination, federally, state, province level. You know, the concrete industry has been a real leader in resource recovery and reuse and circularity. And, you know, you've seen the concrete industry, like the steel industry and the coal-fired power generation industries, they've all sort of grown together, right? And they've created this synergistic sort of environment. And now we see the sustainability movement, which is critical, but now we're starting to see blast furnaces close, and we're starting to see coal-fired power plants close. But I don't think the policymakers are considering the impacts on those circular supply chains. And I'll give you an example. I mean, where I come from in Nova Scotia, it's virtually all coal-fired generation in Nova Scotia and New Brunswick, and it's also an area where there's, reactive aggregates. And so you need to use, fly ash materials in your concrete mix designs in order to mitigate the reactivity of those aggregates. And they're starting to close down power plants. And it's like, well, where's the fly ash going to come from? It's not just a nice to have, a material that you can use in lieu of cement or for sustainability. It's actually technically needed to utilize a lot of these accessible aggregates that are within reasonable range of projects. So I would like to see more coordination on that front. And also, just in terms of like the diminishing supply of things like blast furnace slag or fly ash. I mean, to start to think about like allocating those for technical reasons, blast furnace slag for like low heat mix designs for hydroelectric dams or things like this, fly ash for areas with reactive aggregates. When considering the sustainable opportunities or the decarbonization opportunities that come with them, I don't think we should, be taking those materials from projects that actually need them and moving them over to projects that want to decarbonize when they're actually needed for real, technical reasons elsewhere. So it's complicated, and I think the policymakers need to be a little more thoughtful moving forward on how we proceed with policy decisions.
I couldn't agree with you more. Coming from the state of New Jersey, where our genius politicians decided to close our coal plants and shut down some of our nuclear stuff, the end result of that was 22% increase in electric power rates, because they also told us to use EVs. So yes, a bit more coordination, a bit more thoughtfulness would be great. Andrew, any thoughts in terms of the future?
Yeah, I think, in listening to everybody speak through this event and trying to understand where AI fits into my daily life in construction and aggregates, I think there's such a great inefficiency in transportation and logistics. My background, the trucking that we would use for just our business, that all our competition is using trucks elsewhere. They're leaving the city, they're coming back empty. So this great inefficiency in transportation is causing more, you talk about the environment, right? So we're burning more fuel, we're putting more truck traffic on the roads, where if there was some kind of, I think about these cars I see driving around this city by themselves, there's got to be some kind of tech system to that to determine where to best position those vehicles as they await a customer. So how can AI and technology be applied to logistics so that maybe then in the future there's some kind of shared truck program between competing businesses, but we're all kind of benefiting financially and environmentally from that. It seems like way above my understanding of how AI works, but it seems like somebody could simply put that together.
Right, excellent. All right, let me open up. I know there were some folks who beforehand mentioned they may have some questions. So let me open it up for some questions from the audience for the panel.
I have lots of questions. I actually asked your predecessor, and it's something that I bring up specifically in and around the subject when we speak to folks, which is in order to get adoption for better practices and utilization, the question is like carrot and stick. I heard you talk about value, right? What is the real value? What is the cost versus the benefit? And I wonder if we need something, the closest analog that I can come up with is like LEED, right? What LEED did for environmental impact on vertical construction back in the early days, how they started and built that, and they set practices and standards, and then that was something that everyone could build on. And part of that was need driven, but then part of it was standardization, so that there was a proper way to have uniform measurement and impact, and then you could benefit from that, whether it was a state or federal or local incentive, but also just for some of the inefficiencies that you've talked about. Do you think something like that is required, or do you think it can be kind of addressed?
Yeah, we actually are working on that, not at a level like LEED at a national level, but we are working with that. For example, shingles, which has been an issue. There's been a lot of technological advancements in how that feeds in, but we have forums and we try to match recyclers with producers, because really you have to take, if you're paving, I mean, I know you guys are in concrete, so you understand that mixed design is so critical. It's the same in asphalt. So oftentimes you have to get the recycler to work directly with the asphalt plant who's going to receive it, and they have to make the specifications specifically for them. So it is, I don't know if there's not a blanket answer to that, but we do need to have some more structure and more education and being able to teach people how to do this, how to have standards. The same with gypsum. You have gypsum that goes back into manufacturing is different than gypsum that goes in maybe for agricultural uses. So those are kind of things that, and it's tricky. We have a long way to go, but I mean, it would be nice to be able to have one sort of standard format across the board. Maybe one day.
I would like to add something on there in terms of incentivization and how to propel these things forward. I think a good example comes out of the great state of New Jersey. Okay? The tax credit that you can get for decarbonization. I think it still exists. Maybe I'm wrong, but there was one in place a few years ago. I really like that one because it's not saying you need to meet this target. And some producers might say, like, how do I meet that target? I don't have any materials to do this, so I can't bid on this project. It just means that, like, if you can, decarbonize, you get a tax credit. So, I mean, it incentivizes people to do it, but it doesn't, create constraints or barriers for them to participate. So I think more programs like that can be, rolled out at the state level would be really great because I think they're very flexible and should work.
From what I've heard, I think that's what's driven more recycling in Europe is there's a landfill tax, and I think it's created more innovation for people to find ways to recycle, to divert more materials from the landfill. And I feel like in the U.S. we get a taste of that more so on the price, but that's not the same thing as a landfill tax.
Yeah, and it's an interesting point you make, with having a tax credit. One of the other issues I think that needs to be that we hear a lot from our customers is the whole permitting process and how long it takes to actually get permits to do recycling facilities, whether it's a MRF or a transfer station, anything to try to divert the material. So on the one hand, some of the governments talk about wanting to encourage landfill diversion, but on the other hand, they don't make it so easy to actually build the facility in order to accomplish that. I think one of the other things that's very clear, per Andrea's initial comment about distances and how far things have to travel. If we have more of these facilities in various locations, so that folks don't have to travel far to justify the recycling, that will certainly improve things. Other questions?
Barry, I just want to point out, I think there is a method for expediting projects in New Jersey. It's called payola.
Yep, and that's why we have all this great fraud prevention in our software.
If there's no other questions, let's have a hand for our panel.